Hi, I'm Carson with Street Rod Glass here in Riverside, California, and today we had a customer bring in a truck. He attempted to put the back window in himself, had a few issues, so he stopped by and asked if we could help him out, and we're going to walk you through and show you exactly how we do it here, and hopefully this helps you guys in the future. So the tools we're going to use today is pretty basic stuff. We're going to use the Sears handy pliers to trim the rubber. This just gives us a good clean cut when we cut and trim it to fit. None of the gaskets that are provided are all cut to fit. None of them are pre-cut. Some are good, some are bad. That was one of the problems this gentleman had. So those will trim that up nice. We use a regular bone stick. That's going to help fish the glass into the rubber. It's plastic, so it's better than metal on glass. The interlock tool, this tool was actually made in the 50s. We still use it today. This is going to install the interlock into the rubber, which is what in turn holds the glass in place. And the last tool is just the regular old hook tool that most of you guys have. Comes in handy, lipping the rubber over the glass, ripping the rubber over the body of the truck. So that's all we'll be using today, and we'll go from there. Okay, the first thing we do here is get the truck ready by protecting everything. These back windows, they're difficult to do. All the aftermarket ones are not absolute perfect to the originals. So what we end up having to do is fight with them a little bit. We're going to show you some of the things that are going to make that easier. But before we get to that, we kind of put some blankets down. We're going to run some tape around the perimeter. All of that stuff just in case. Glass is cheap, paint jobs aren't. This truck was just painted just a few days ago, so it's still soft. So we really got to be really careful with it. It's very delicate. With these metallics, you know how hard they are to blend in. And so we're going to go ahead and protect everything, and then we'll show you the next step. Okay, where we're going to start now is we're going to get the rubber cut, fit, and installed in the back of the cab. First thing you do is measure, find the center of the back window. The rubber's cut to fit, it has a seam. You want that seam to be uniform with the truck. You don't want it off to the side, it's going to stand out. This gentleman has a third brake light, so it's going to make it real easy. We're going to have that seam line up with that. Even if he's off a little bit, we want to match his. Otherwise, it's going to not be proportionate. So we're just going to make a little reference mark right where we want the seam to start. We're going to take our gasket. Most of the gaskets the first cut that they provide you is at an angle. It's not cut square. The first thing we're going to do is square that cut up with these handy pliers. It cuts it real nice. It's perfect. Now we're going to go ahead and put this rubber around the perimeter. As we're doing that, we're trying not to stretch the gasket. We just want to push it in here. Rubber shrinks over time. Typically, for every foot of rubber will shrink up to 1/8 of an inch in time. So for a perimeter like this that's roughly 12 feet, we're going to add 8/12, which is going to come out to be about 1.25 inches to the overall measurement. That way, when it shrinks, it doesn't pull apart at the seam. So as it runs around, it's going to be a little bit longer. We're going to then stuff the rubber backwards. That way it's a good tight fit. Down the road, he won't open up and have any gaps down here. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do now. Okay, now that we got all the way around the perimeter, you'll see the amount that's left over. It could be a little bit more, it could be a little bit less, but you definitely don't want it just cut it right to this line. Like I said, this is going to shrink up. So what we'll do is we'll cut the rubber long, then we'll come over here and we'll push the rubber back into itself. As we do that, because the rubber flexes so much, it now allows us to get that rubber down in there. And now that it's relaxing, it's pushing back in on itself. So that seam will never pull apart. When we go to put the interlock in at the end, we'll also show you what we'll do there to help hold that seam together. All right, this step's obviously easier if you have a partner that can hold one side for you. What we want to do now is get the bottom of the glass set in the rubber. We're going to let gravity help us out on this. So far what we're doing is just getting the bottom set in place, letting gravity kind of hold it so we can relax a little bit. And now we just go just a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch, just getting that rubber lipped up just like this. All of this rubber lipped around the glass. And a lot of times you spray a little glass cleaner on to help lubricate it. It slides on a little easier. You can kind of reach through the cab. You can push the rubber up a little bit, and it just take your time, just a little at a time with these. Once that part gets in, it's going to be real easy after that. This is the hardest part of it. The most critical thing is, as we're putting this in, is keeping this back window centered in the cab. You don't want it going too far to the right and too far to the left. Once you start getting it into that rubber, it's real hard to move them. So always start off perfect, shoot for perfect, and by the time you're done, if it's just 1/8 of an inch off, that can be moved a little bit. But you don't want to start off wrong. By the time you're done, you'll never recoup from it. Okay, now that the bottom's hanging down in there and gravity's holding the window in place, we just continue to work this rubber all the way around the perimeter, all the way across the top. Once the top's done, then we're coming back here, and now we do the sides. Because it wraps around, you have to do the top before you do the sides. That way you'll fill up this gap. As you push the glass in here, it's going to close the gap down the side here. So when you first start putting it in, if you see a gap on the sides, don't panic, that's normal. As soon as this glass starts laying into place, that gap's going to close up, kind of like what we have going on here. This side's just about all in. Once you get this rubber lipped all the way around the perimeter, you're literally just doing a 1/4 inch at a time. You're going to take your hand, open-handed, gently but firmly, if that makes any sense, and kind of just seat it into place. Do that all the way around nice and even. So after we get this lipped all the way around, we're going to go take the interlock, and we're going to run the interlock all the way around. We're going to clean it up, and we'll be good to go after that. But just take your time here. Make sure the rubber is all the way seated over the glass, just like this, all the way around the perimeter. Okay, now that we got the rubber lipped around the glass, all we have to do now is put the interlock in. The interlock, shaped like this, has a sharp point down here. That point is going to go into the rubber this direction. So with this tool, you can open the rubber up and you can start fishing this in. And you just work this all the way around. Spraying a little glass cleaner on it, use some soap and water, or Dawn dish soap works really good. It allows this tool to slide a lot easier in here. So always do that. When you're doing this, I always keep one hand in front of the tool, and I stay choked up on it pretty good. If this tool comes out, it'll slide right across the glass or right across the truck and scratch it. So if you keep your hand there, at least you just hit your hand and you don't damage any glass or paint. Okay, now that we just have this little piece across the bottom to do, we finish zipping this in. You just kind of feed it as you're going. You'll get a feel for it as you're doing it. And when you get to the end there, don't put the seam of the interlock right in the same seam as the main perimeter seal. Come over about 1 inch and do it, and that way there's an actual interlock holding those two pieces together like we talked about earlier. When you're done, you can just kind of pull the rubber into each other. It fills up the gaps. You'll mark your interlock. You'll cut it nice and square with your pliers. You'll tuck that in. You can use your hook tool, you can use your bone stick, whatever works good for you. Then just clean up the window and you'll be good to go. Now that we got the interlock all in, it's time just to clean everything up that we did here. We'll take the tape off nice and carefully. Try not to pull any clear coat, any paint off. Anywhere where your interlock didn't seat all the way in, for instance right here, you can take your hook tool, you can take your bone stick and just kind of tuck that in. There might be a few places where your tool came out as you were going around. Get those dialed in, just like that, and go from there.